My name is Roger Allen Jackson, as you can see on the screen. And I will make further introductions again as others come in. However, as you would have seen in the description of what I do, I have been a motion designer for many years. Good morning. Motion designer for many years. Started off in graphic design back in the 90s. I use Photoshop, one of the very earliest versions of it. For those of you that know Adobe Photoshop, the first version of Photoshop I used was version 2, not CS2, version 2 of Photoshop. That's before Photoshop had layers. I believe it was that version, and then they got layers, etc. However, what we're talking about today, transversality and synesthesia, I would like to focus on computational thinking with regard to that, because a lot of times creative people tend to think there's a line to be drawn between science and creativity, between technology and art, between mathematics and art, between STEM and art, engineering as well. So there's this line to be drawn. So I'm just going to share my presentation right now. Presentation I made based on some research that I did with some visual arts students at the University of the West Indies. Shared the wrong thing. Let's get that correct. Share. And I'm sharing this. Yes. Yes. So it's titled Introducing Computational Art to Humanities Students. And so this course, DART 2324, is called Film and Video. And I was looking at updating the course content to contemporary trends, to new thinking, to encourage computational thinking. We will have a definition of computational thinking as we go along, to take them from being consumers of technology to being creators of it, rather than just using what is given to us, using what is provided, to actually taking and making things or adapting things to our own needs, to change the arts versus humanities versus science, engineering mindset that many creatives have, or even people on the other side, although we're not saying it's sides, but the science engineering side of things. So I conducted a survey to gain the insights into the students. It's a 13-week course each year, and I wanted to know what their experiences were with this new content that I presented to them, that I offered to them, that they experienced, and whether they were interested in learning more, and what format they preferred this education to be in. So just some background. In the mid-1990s, that's where this media literacy explosion really happened, where there was this focus on video production. A lot of courses sprang up that had video cameras involved and recording. I was a part of that as a student in college, where I took a computer art course at this community college that I was going to in the United States in South Florida. And I was given a video camera, and you go around and you record things. I can show you some of that work that came out of that course if I just add the share. Bring the browser. From a laptop, so the screen is very small. And yes, so this is my website, 350.com. And in the archive section, this is some of the work that I did using that old technology back from 1993 to 1998. This is the very first thing I did. and I'm sure it looks very rudimentary. So I would take a video camera out and go record things, record myself, record, and then come back into the computer room and take screen grabs of the images and manipulate them, do things, add graphics, draw on top of them, and do things. So very rudimentary things back in 1993, 94, 95, 96, coming up to 1998, where I did some of these other ones, experimentation, things like that. And so, however, from 2005, the public got sophisticated enough to decode abstract video and motion design. So we could sit down and we could look at, we could go to a movie theater, and we could look, movie theaters mostly, and we would see these trailers for movies. And within the trailers, we just get these quick series of images and these ideas of what the movie entails. And just from viewing these things, we could read what the entire movie is about. Sometimes you did not even need to see the movie after viewing these images. So our brains developed in such a way that we could decode these things, much like emoticons, the way we can look at these little icons or emojis, what they're called, and tell what a person is feeling just by looking at these little emoji. In times past, before we use those things in chat, before MSN Messenger and ICQ and years in the past, those things would mean nothing or they would be very cryptic to us. So from 2010, anyone could take on the role of a whole production company from a bedroom studio. They could sit in their bedroom or any room in their home, have their computer, take their camera, start recording things and do a whole movie based in their room, or they can do a whole animation in one room without having an entire crew, big cameras and the expensive equipment. From 2011, we got high quality video and audio effects becoming available to consumers on mobile devices. So you did not even need a video camera anymore. You can have your mobile phone and do your recordings right in there, etc. And so based on that, coming out of that, the conclusion was that art educators need to expand the concept of this visual literacy to address problems and challenges of contemporary society. It's no longer using videotapes in cameras anymore, mini DV tapes and things like that. How can we update the curriculum and the thinking? Computational thinking. It was ranked one of the 9 hottest topics in ed tech in 2018. And it encourages creativity that can have a significant impact on society. What is computational thinking? And how does it overlap with creative thinking? They both require observing, confidence in dealing with complexity, imaging, persistence, abstraction, tolerance for ambiguity, patterning, ability to deal with open-ended problems. Creative thinking overlapping with computational thinking, how can they benefit each other? So the observation phase, where you observe and you see the complex problem and you have confidence in saying, okay, I can come up with a solution to this. Oftentimes in dealing with students, what I've seen is they're very accepting of the situation within which they live. I would ask, okay, what problem is there that you are having on a daily basis, perhaps, that you think you would like to solve? And I find that many of them they can't readily think of a problem that they would like to solve. They don't readily think, well, okay, this happens. If I were to ask you right now to offer a suggestion, what problem do you have on a daily basis? A problem or something that you do every day that you'd like to fix just a little bit. Would anyone like to provide an answer to that? Make sure that I'm seeing. You may raise your hands or just interject if I can't see your hands. Yeah, so perhaps it's something to do with brushing your teeth. You wake up in the morning and you find that the way toothbrushes are designed doesn't work for you. You need a better way of doing that. or the toothpaste tube, or something with a hairbrush, or maybe it's your transportation method. Think of the situation we're under right now with the pandemic that we're all experiencing. What can you change to make better? Everyone's wearing the same type of mask mostly. We have some issues with that, the behind the ears problem, the soreness. I saw just recently on I think it was Business Insider or the Interesting Engineering Facebook page, that the United States government was giving out, were offering $500,000 for a better mask design, since we're going to be wearing masks so much going on into the future, for a better mask design. Has anyone thought of that, is the question. What I've redesigned my own mask, if I can find one. So there are people who, because of the problem behind the ear, they've designed these things. I see Arnaldo is showing one. What did you do? How did you innovate that? Would you like to talk about it? Mention it. Let us know.
Hi.
Hello.
Everyone. You can hear me, yeah?
Yes.
So I also didn't like the notion of any straps behind my ears. I already wear glasses. So, and also my hair is pretty thick.
Right.
But that's not actually the concern. My hair being what it is, actually affected how I designed this mask. So ultimately, this was the initial design, which is the mask as we know it, with loops that can go around the ears, should I feel compelled to that, but also like this extended string that like ties behind my head. The challenge that I discovered with that is because of the angle with my ears and all of that, it creates this line in my hair. It looks really weird. So I came around to do this other design that just like dropped the strap below my ears.
Right.
And both actually work really well with my glasses in that because this isn't a like those disposable medical masks that again work with that type of tension to the face.
Mm-hmm.
I had this you can't see it, but there's a metal inside of here that kind of mimics that to add some to hold to my nose.
Yes, like a skeleton.
And then I add, but what it also does is that because it's just it's this very thin indent, I actually use my glasses as well, the
yes,
pressure point, just to hold it in place. So literally it's very little tension at all on my face between where my glasses already makes contact here and behind my head. But this is really just Velcro. And yeah, does the job.
Yeah, so thanks, Arnaldo. That's a good demonstration. So that's
also
what
one other thing is the thing is people are also taking on and taking off their mask because they're attached to their two ears. So by also having this string that kind of like goes around your neck, my mask I like reduce contamination in a sense, because I'm not taking it out, putting it in my pocket, resting it down, and also losing it. People are losing their masks like quite often. So I pretty much just wear my mask all day, like the rest of my clothes. Yeah, that's it. Cheers.
Right, that's it. So that's what I'm talking about. That's what we're talking about. Not just accepting what is given to you, but taking it and improving on it, iterating, making a device or making a machine that can help you move forward with something. So you'd find that with coding and with computational thinking and sharing of information, that oftentimes you don't have to start from point A. You don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. You can take the wheels that have already been invented and then take it further. Arnaldo, for example, didn't come up with a concept for a mask, but he came up with a concept for improving the mask, making it more comfortable, making it more efficient. And patterning, ability to deal with open-ended problems. Patterning, for example, is coming up with a pattern, perhaps a sequence of something, of doing something that can be reused over and over again. And so that persistence, keeping at a problem, tolerance for ambiguity, not being sure of something, but sticking with it despite that until you come up with a solution to the problem. What is computational arts? Getting deeper into it. We're talking about creative coding. These courses have gained increased support at schools of visual arts and design, and graduates are in high demand by employers. Why? It gives you that transversality, that ability to, that cross-disciplinary approach to things, where if you're a creative person or being a creative person, you also have this functionality, this ability to understand the other side of things. You can work with engineers, you can work with scientists, you can work with mechanics, mathematicians to help visualize their concepts, their ideas, and that increases your demand, your ability to do these things, to describe things, to represent information in a visual format. That understanding, that bridging of the gap in translating things from one format to the visual format, or maybe music or sound or uh, performance, things like that. And then just by way of definition, creative electronics is where we get to what's been happening a lot since perhaps probably 5, 6 years ago, where there's a lot of tinkering and making and 3D printing taking place. People have 3D printers have become consumer items that can be purchased and used in the home, etc. Taking apart things. I've been doing this since I was a little boy. And so this is where some of I see someone in the chat. Should we be seeing slides? Yes, you should be seeing slides. Thanks for that comments. I'm just going to show this one. Yeah, thanks for that reminder. It's clear on the screen now. Yes. So we have creative coding that I mentioned just now, and then the electronics, taking things apart, etc. I had a lot of ideas when I was a kid, and right now in 2021, the past few years, is when I'm seeing the ability to actually make these things. So when I was about 11 years old, 12 years old, I remember designing a remote control helicopter, radio control helicopter. I had all of my diagrams and everything. But the problem was, if you take, when I put the batteries in to power the helicopter, those D-sized batteries would have been too large and too heavy, and it would not be able to lift off. So we didn't have lithium ion batteries. At least I did not know about lithium ion batteries, lithium polymer batteries, and the size of them may not have been the size they are now. So I came up with a way through reading some science books I found at the library that maybe I can convert electricity into radio waves. And then on the helicopter itself, the toy, it would receive radio waves and convert them back into electricity. That way I have wireless electricity or wireless power. I'm seeing that they have wireless televisions now. It would not have worked because I spoke to an electrician as a little boy, and he told me that the transformers and whatnot would have to be too large inside of the helicopter, so it would still be too large to fly anyway. But these are the ideas I had, and now I'm seeing that I can make these things. So there's this question that I ask students as well. If you could go back and tell your childhood self something, give him some advice, what would it be? And what mine would be is that you will make the things that you dream of. That's what I would tell my childhood self, because I'm seeing now that the things that I dreamt of as a child, I have the ability to actually make them now through the technology that has been developed. We can, as I've heard said, stand on the shoulders of giants. So the people before us that make things, we build on that and we keep moving on and building rather than starting from the very beginning. Arts, humanities versus science engineering, often seen as opposing subcultures. And arts students and educators often tend to view themselves as creatively minded as opposed to scientifically minded. However, when you think of what you do as a creative, it is scientific. That experimentation that you go through, often there's a process. Let me try this material. No, this does not work. There's a scientific method that goes behind this. You have an idea, you say, let me try this out. And as you try it out, you realize this works, this does not work. And so it is a scientific process. don't put yourself down, or don't say that it's not. The majority of the students I dealt with were women in their 20s. You can see this in the gender aspect here. Female, this is this blue area, 76% of them were women, 20% were male, and 4% rather not identify. And then we have the age grouping, where if you look closely, we had someone over 50, or someone, at least 4% of them were over 50 years old, in the 40 to 49 bracket age group. We had, what is that, 8%. The reason I highlight those is that often older people or people in that age group tend to think that I can't do these things. I can't grasp these things. And then we had some younger ones down under 19, down to 4%. The majority though were in the 20 to 29 age bracket. Whether they had coding education or electronics education, you see the breakdown there. No education, sorry, zero, none of them. Sorry, no education. We had like 60%, we had 44% in these brackets. And then this is how many in each of these, ranging from none to 5+, and whether they had taken that course before. What is their perceived knowledge? So again, we're talking to creative students in the humanities faculty, which means it's those perhaps doing visual art, music, film, those sorts of courses. Perceived knowledge of art, see, it rises there. The large majority rate themselves above average or higher in the knowledge of arts, and most consider themselves average or lower in STEM knowledge. Particularly in engineering, you see very few thought of themselves as being above average. And then their interest in these things before the course. How many were actually interested in any of these things? New media, interactive art, generative design, robotic art. See the breakdown there. How many were very interested? Interactive art have a high, at least a little bit more than half there. And I'm moving forward a bit because we need to actually get into where you're doing some things. What I would say is, while you're listening to me, what I would suggest is you open up a website. Let me share a link in the chats, which I should open right now. editor.p5js.org. That's the site that I want you to visit, where we will be doing some of our actual practical work, because you're going to do some of the same things that these students took part in, and hopefully you will like it so much that you'll never stop doing it. Someone else has just joined us. Yes. So this was their interest, whether they were slightly interested, not interested at all, before and after, how the breakdown was. So we see a rise, an increase in interest. In most of them, those who were not interested at all, which went from somewhat to not interested at all, somewhat, slightly not interested. Afterwards, their interest grew considerably in each one of these areas. So what it takes is actually doing the thing. You have to do the thing and then realize, by doing this, I can do this. However, that step, that valley, that chasm you have to cross, just take the risk to jump off and then figure out how to survive while you're falling. A lot of people don't want to do that. So when I asked them about their experience in the survey, how many thought that it would be useful to them, and how many of them had their minds opened up to new possibilities. You see what the breakdown is there as well. What the learning experience was, whether it was difficult, somewhat difficult, neutral, somewhat enjoyable, or enjoyable. See how that turns out there. Not everyone's going to enjoy this sort of thing. However, we post the website, someone asks. it's, just get the actual link so that I just click on it. It's in the Brave browser. Let's see. There it is. It should now be clickable. Getting back to our slides. Yes. So the conclusions coming out of this. Yeah, we did that already. The likelihood. What are the likelihood of enrolling in a future course? This is not really relevant to what we're doing here, but we'll just go through it. That how many were very likely to pursue it further in other courses? You see, most of them were interested in going further. In fact, some of them, after doing that 13-week course, have gone on to have exhibitions of their own, to even enter competitions and win prizes based on this sort of work, because their minds were just opened up to these possibilities of what they can do. And so these were the conclusions that came out of that short study that I did, survey and report that I wrote, and what the CA refers to computational art, and the type of format they would like to pursue such courses in. Any questions so far? And I would encourage you to feel free to interject, raise your hand, ask questions. And that way, everyone would have get their questions answered. Arnaldo, you have a question? Yes.
Hi, Roger. I joined just like a few minutes later, so I just wanted to grasp, you were discussing impressions from students in what program?
This is film and
You
video course.
Yeah.
At DCFA, Department of Creative and Festival Arts, University of the West Indies.
Right, and so this is your research, and so you
yes,
got a sense. Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, that course was historically based in, if I were to, won't go back to the slides, I'll just explain it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very 90s thing, videotaping and VHS tapes and mini DV tapes coming forward. And while that was what video literacy or visual literacy became, moving from still imagery in the past to moving images, to it's progressed beyond that. And so in looking at where things are going, the trends toward computational thinking, that sort of thing, creative coding, generative design, the question was, are students interested in that sort of thing? And how can they benefit from it? And the conclusions were that there is this divide, in thinking through research and literature, that arts humanities is a separate thing from STEM, from engineering, mathematics. And as we discussed just a moment ago, it's not really a separate thing, because the same processes can help both. The type of thinking helps both areas, where you have to experiment, perhaps form a hypothesis. I'm not sure if I'm saying this the right word, but the theory and the experimentation, and then the rejection of ideas that don't work and the adoption of those that do work, and moving forward. And so these things can be used, in addition to which cross-disciplinary work is beneficial to anyone, to everyone. Robert Heinlein, I believe in a book, Time Enough for Love, he had this description of what a competent man should be. But you can say a competent person. And he says eventually that specialization is for insects. Now, that's not necessarily a scientific description or explanation of the way things work in the world. However, this idea that I am an artist, I am an dancer, I'm whatever I am, and I have to stay a jewelry maker, whatever. I stay in my lane. I can't step over. Humans aren't like that. We learn many things. We know many different things. And throughout our lives, we learn many different things. And if we can reach into different areas and use those things, pull them into what we do, it makes us more valuable, and it makes us into thinkers. So let's look at let me just give some examples of some things that I've worked on recently and in the past.
Okay. Is it okay if I ask another question?
Sure.
So ultimately, you collected these impressions, perceptions from those students. To what was the goal?
The goal was to see whether, just for myself really, whether providing the sort of education, these options to students, whether within the university framework or without, whether they would be interested, whether they would benefit from it, and what the benefits would be.
All right, and so that was going to inform how you were going to carry that class forward.
Yes. So this was in the 27. I had done it before, previously, with students without surveying them, and I found that they grasp it really quickly. Like I said, all the way up to people over 50 years old were like diving in and taking things apart. They were even building. I bought. I mean, it's a film and video course, but I bought little buttons, and I can show you some of those things eventually. Buttons and wires and little single board computers, and provided them to each student. And they were able to make interfaces that, rather than watching video, and this is what I should have mentioned earlier as well. I see a hand raised. I should have mentioned this earlier. Rather than just watching, rather than just being a consumer, it gives you the ability to create and to interact with things. And then you can then in turn give the viewer the ability to interact with the video that you create. So no longer are viewers, you see it with what is it? Was it Bandersnatch, the name of the film?
Yeah.
You're aware of it on Netflix?
From Black Mirror?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, that was interactive. That is one of the early ones. I mean, have you ever seen or read Choose Your Own Adventure books?
A long time ago.
A long time ago, when you were probably like 2 years old. Well, probably, I don't know if you were reading at 2, but really small, right? And so that is an iteration on a book, an innovation on a book where you get to choose. You get to some point, you say, okay, Roger enters the room. And under that sentence, there is, does he turn left? If he turns left, go to page 202. If he turns right, go to page 100 something. And that way, throughout this book, you get to choose these options, whether I should do this, whether I should do that. That is life. When I say that is life, that is what we do on a daily basis. We make these decisions. Should I do this? Should I do that? And in computational thinking, that is what is used. So you get this thing called conditional statements. If you've ever done logic in school, logic, which falls in mathematics, interestingly, it's like, if it is raining, I am going to dinner. Then the question is it raining? And you get to, when you check whether it's raining, you get to decide, am I going to dinner or am I not going to dinner? When I make a robot, I'm going to show you some of my work, as I mentioned. And those are the things that come into making robots, making televisions, making cars. All of those questions come up. And it's all based on, is this happening? Then I should do that. A driverless car is driving down the road. It asks the question, am I seeing someone in the road? No, then I should keep driving. Or you can do it the other way around. If I see someone in the road, stop driving, or else just keep driving. So then it just keeps going. And if some object enters the road, it asks, is it a person? Is it a car? If it is a person, just turn. If it is a car, I can just keep going and plow right through it. Hopefully that's not what the coders do, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Yes, Alana has a question or a comment.
Hi, Roger. Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I was just wondering, in terms of this idea of access to the tools or the bits and pieces, the facilities, the programs. I mean, you mentioned that you had these students and they were through your class, through your program, were able to try using these new objects, using this more or less this machinery, and then learn that they could be, almost fluent in this new language. But then
Yes.
after they come out of the program, then what happens? I mean, I don't know whether that's really a question that can be answered, but after that, going forward, if they want to pursue something, develop themselves more, it's not a challenge going forward, to have access to the same tools that they may have had, during school, and that kind of stuff.
That's a very good question, Alana. Thanks. That's one of the points that we can look at today, in that when I was a kid, I mentioned that earlier, and I came up with this idea for this grand helicopter that would fly in the air and have wireless electricity. Technology gets cheaper and cheaper every year as it gets more and more ubiquitous, and we have places like China which take things and reduce them and mass produce them and make them cheaper. So what has happened, Alana and everyone, is that we have a lot of technology, these single board computers. If I, let me just pause this share and load a website. Adafruit is a good one. Adafruit is a woman-run, I believe it's .com. She's an engineer that runs a website where you can go and you can purchase all of these sensors and things. So there are all of these servos and wires and cables and things that you can purchase. And the prices of them have come down to very affordable depending on what you want to do. One of the issues that I've seen is that taxation is one of the main problems. So that whereas I was able to make a robot for a certain price a few years ago, now because certain duties have gone up on importing certain things, it's become more expensive to make things. And so that has affected education in some way. So when the thinking comes down to the level that, okay, these things are necessary for innovation and education, that's when you will see it becomes even more affordable. But if you look at Adafruit's website, you'll see that you have these things are like $6.95, $24.95. These are the prices of them. And on that's one of the websites. There are several others I can give you. There's one called icstation.com. This is a Chinese one. It says I forgot one of the S's, I believe. Yeah. icstation.com. I'll try to figure it out and I'll show it to you eventually. Yes. So there are others. And on this website, if you look at Learn at the top here, now this is two different, or each, how should I put this? There's the performance artistic side of these, and then there's the utilitarian side of things. And those things can cross because think of your mobile phone. You can have a mobile phone that's like a brick and it's very useful, it works just fine, but then you can have a designed mobile phone that feels nice in the hand and things like that. And so you have, when you look at this, you have fun electric projects, and then you have the things that are actually functional in a way that they serve a purpose, but there's a cross between them. You can get tutorials on here on how to make wearable electronics. You can have shoes that light up when you walk. You can wear goggles that have like swirly LEDs going around them. And there's all of these tutorials on how to do these things. The point is, as I mentioned before, that leap that you have to make. It's a leap into, first of all, not being afraid to break things. So I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna do this. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna try again. Maybe part of the not breaking things is not being afraid to have to spend a little extra money, because if I get this thing and it doesn't work, then or if I try something and it sparks and burns out, I may have to buy another one. But hopefully the cost is so cheap that, yes, hopefully the cost of it is so cheap or so low that you don't mind buying two just in case one burns out. On my, in my experience, I worked on a project. I saw a video actually that showed conductive paint made by a company called Bear Conductive. Bear Conductive, did I get that right? Yes, I did. Bear Conductive, they make conductive paint, or you can call it electric paint. Paint that allows you to pass electricity or current through it. They also make a touch board, which means that each one of these nodes on the touch board can be attached to a different sensor. And I saw this video online of Calvin Harris, I believe. He made an instrument out of, he had a bunch of women standing around with, it's best if I show it rather than speak about it. I mean, we're talking about technology, aren't we? Let's see. Here we go, Calvin Harris, human synthesizer.
Hi, this is Calvin Harris. You've joined me on the set of my first ever human synthesizer. I like to call it the humanthesizer. The human synth was something that the flesh and bones was sent to me by a team of boffins, and I took the boffins' ideas and decided it should be done by attractive women. Right now my foot's getting painted with some of the special connective paint, which is going to turn me into a sort of like a human wire, I suppose, you know, a conductor of electricity. And this is me introducing you to the different elements of the humanthesizer, starting with the piano. There you go, there's some piano, this is the drums. There's the drums.
I mean, there's really no reason for the women to be not wearing clothes, but...
There we go. That's quite nice, actually, man. And over here we have the trancey key kind of riff going on here. Let's see. Bit of that. Bit of this. And also a bit of that. And all combined, we should have an absolutely 100%
so I'm just going to skip forward. This would be in the recording. So as we get to the point where yeah, well, so I think that all it was is painting these women with conductive paint. He has some on his hand, and when he touches it, it sends that, it closes the circuit and plays a sound. This website, you can purchase the paint. I went and I purchased the paint. I found out how much it was. You get this little pot of it. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but I wanted to try it out. I got the touch board as well. And there's this exhibition that was coming up called, at the university called, I think this, I'm not sure which one I tried first. It may have been the paper pan one. So this, I took some paperboard and made a shape. And on the inside, well, on the outside, I painted it with that conductive paint. And put on the board, I put the sounds of a steel pan. And when you, now it's also, let's say this, it's also proximity sensitive, so you don't actually have to touch it. Once your finger gets close to it, it picks up the capacitance. And it's so you can actually make a steel pan in inverted commas out of paper, and for very cheap. So it's not the issue with it was it was not very, what's the word, predictable. You'd notice that sometimes I would hear two notes. I would hear the note play sometimes it won't play. That made me think of something else, that unpredictableness. How about using that? When we think of machines, we want machines to be predictable. You don't want to wake up one day, get into your car to go to work, and the car does not feel like going to work that day. It doesn't feel like driving. The sun is too hot. I don't want to leave the garage. Nothing you do is going to make it go. And so we want our machines to be predictable. We want to know, okay, it's going to do the same thing over and over again. Using technology that's not predictable, it kind of, it inspired me. It makes me like technology a bit more because human beings are unpredictable to some extent. And so I decided to use that concept. This is the process, by the way, of making it, testing it out. It's just a concept that I was working with. Maybe I'll get back to it at some point. Again, look, if there's any hands, feel free, and any comments or questions, feel free to jump in. One of the things that I'll just show you the progression of that project. Another opportunity came up with this exhibition at the university called Interpretations of Human Form. And so I thought of using it in conjunction with a program called processing. Now, in line with Alana's question, a lot of the actual software is free. I grew disillusioned with purchasing software years ago when things became too expensive for me. I started, with my, conscience and everything. I said, okay, once I'm finished with school, and I start working and I can afford it, I'm going to start buying all of my software. I'm not going to pirate software anymore. I started buying Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator and all of these things. I purchased Cinema 4D to do animation. And the awful thing is, as soon as I started doing that, the prices started to skyrocket in software. So I got to a point where I could not, unless I was a professional working with these things and making money, I could not afford these things anymore. And that's when I found open source software. So one of the applications I use is called Processing. You can find it at processing.org. It is free of charge. You can make a donation if you like. And this man here, Dan Schiffman, he's a wonderful person that has a ton of tutorials online on how to use processing, the way to use P5.js, which we're going to use a bit today. And those languages, those abilities, those skills that you learn in using this can be translated to other things like web design and a whole ton of other, bunch of other, just add to the share so I can show you processing, what it looks like. And then I'll give you an example of what I've done with it. Yes, this is the processing window. This is the welcome screen. You download it and you can start doing some tutorials, learning how to code in Java, in Python. You can even add Android mode to it. So you can do coding for phones. Now I know this term coding, excuse me, makes people a bit nervous. And that's why we're gonna do some coding today. And of course, because you're not gonna be graded on it, then you don't have to worry whether you get an A, B, C, or D on it or not. Some people would be pleased by that. Go back to show you. Again, I use processing. If I open this a little larger so that it shows the whole thing. And I use processing to do the projection part of it. So I have, again, linking things, and that's what the computational thinking helps you with. You break down the idea into parts, and then you can connect them, like using maybe a DVD player. That's people still use DVD players. I don't know. something that's connected to something else with an HDMI cable, a computer to television or to something else. And that way you're connecting these different machines together. You're modularizing things, you're making modules. You make a factory, and this factory does this, and this other thing does this, and I connect it together and it does something else. So the exhibition was interpretations of human form, and there was a lot of art with people drawing and showing off anatomy and things like that. And I thought, I know as a man, I experience a lot where people walk up and make comments on your body, especially in the Caribbean. I don't know. They say, oh, you got fat, you gained weight. Oh, you got bigger, you get small. I have experience where I've been working out for like 2 weeks straight and somebody says, oh, you're getting fat, boy. Like at the end of the 2 weeks, and that just like sends you down. It's like, come on, I've been working so hard at this thing. I know some of you don't have to worry about that, but I know women experience it a lot and maybe even more. So I decided, how about looking at the interpretation from that angle, the way people interpret your body. What is a perfect body? I don't know. And so this project was called Zero Sum. And when you touch the magazines, I made a magazine stand with women's magazines talking about what is like the perfect abs and things like that. And as you touched any part of it, it would change the size of that part of the body in the projection. The hips would get larger or the breasts would get larger. And there would be sounds that relate to each one of the things as you touch it. Inside of each of these magazines is that conductive paint on a sheet. On one of the pages, I painted the page. And then behind everything is connected to a little Mac mini computer, which is then connected to a projector, which projects this light on the screen. Again, this linking of technology and visual art. Now, the thing is, you don't need to know how to do all of these things on your own, but it's good to know that it's possible. So that if you don't want to do the technology side on your own, you know it's possible. You can get someone to do it for you. Right now, I'm working on a device for another artist, which I can't show you yet because it's I don't want to show her work off. All right, well, I see one person's Precious is a bit inspired. Well, one of the interesting things I'll tell you about art like this, though, is I came into the exhibition and I found one lady was having a conversation next to another one, and she had her nice cold drink resting on top of it. Because people's consideration of what art is varies, and she probably did not think of this as one of the pieces in the show. So she was chatting with someone and she rests a nice cold drink with the dripping condensation on it on top of my magazine stand in the corner, which I did not mind because in my opinion, to me, that's part of showing work. Everyone's impressions are allowed. And if that's what you feel about it, that's valid. I'm not going to get upset over that. So that was using the conductive paint again. And you notice that there's that sound that was going all the time because, again, as I said, it's unpredictable. There's this, because of the capacitance in the air, it's constantly receiving information and changing. There are ways to make it more precise, but I embraced the impreciseness of it, the unpredictableness of it. This then led me to think, what of machines that are alive? Because it kind of mimics humanity in terms of being unpredictable. And let's see if I had another one before that. Yes, that led me to this project, which I call the Audrey Project, just because I like the name Audrey. And this is 3 minutes and 34 seconds long. I decided, what if, just to give you the spiel or give you the talk on it, is that, again, we keep trying to make robots and machines like people. In fact, humans have this drive to anthropomorphize things or zoomorphize things, make things into people. We look at a car and we say that car has a shark face. There should be zoomorphism. Like you give it an ant. You say that looks like it's smiling at me. You see shapes in the clouds. We put if your computer doesn't work, you say it's like, you know, it's not feeling to do something today, or we give these emotions to inanimate objects. And so I decided, how about I use that? And is that what we really want? Do we want things to be human-like? What if we made robots? And I should ask the question this way: would you allow a robot to take care of your baby if you had one, your child? I see one person saying yes, another person saying no. What if the robot was not predictable? Jalissa says, why not? What if the robot was not predictable? What if the robot had feelings and decided, you know what? This baby is screaming too much. I'm gonna shut it up. So we don't want it. Now let's look at the converse of things. How about, how about a human being that sits in the corner? Okay, let me give you this example. I knew a man that would say the same thing every time he saw me, even if he saw me multiple times in the day. If I saw him, he would say, so how you going? You all right? I'd say, yes, I'm fine. Then he'd see him again, like 15 minutes later, he'd say the same thing again. So how you going? Are you all right? Or what if you saw someone and they're sitting in the corner and they're rocking back and forth and they're doing the same thing, they're just doing that over and over again. To our minds, that is not what we would put into the norms of human behavior. That is like a repetitive action, and we expect things to be a little more diverse. We would say, okay, that person needs to get some kind of assistance, or there's something. I'm not gonna go into details of that because I'm not a psychologist. So there's that question. We want robots to be more like people, but do we really want that? And do we ascribe humanity or full like operational humanity to someone who does not act the way we expect humans to act? If they act more machine-like, if they're more repetitive. Could I communicate with the robots? Is it sentient? Well, I will start playing this, but let me just, I know I'm giving a long talk before I start, but I made it look like this deliberately because, oh, you're talking about the robots that's to take care of your child. Right. That's going a little too deep into it right now, but we'll see. That's good questions to ask, though. Those are good questions to ask. I made the robot look like this because I did not want it to look like a biological object. I wanted it to look, geometric as much as possible, and it's made out of 3D printed plastic. So I'm just gonna play it, and let's see if this is the correct one. So this is based on the same concept of the conductive paint that is unpredictable. So I don't know what this machine is going to do when someone touches it. And interestingly, when different people touch it, it does different things because capacitance, I guess, is different. And then I made more than one. And it took on different personalities. Now again, that's anthropomorphizing them because robots don't really have personalities, or do they? So these are people interacting with them. It's kind of like that person is going closer to her. And what I found is that despite there being inorganic shapes, not biological shapes, geometric, people started to like them and to give them names and to say they're like a puppy, or it's like it's like a pet. That doesn't even feel nice. She's touching it and it's just plastic. But see, someone says they're cute. Now, are they really? I cheated a bit because I used what you call the golden ratio in deciding what proportions I would make it. And then I put these two lights on the front that are like eyes, which kind of cheats a bit, but they're not really eyes.
No.
Just to get into, so I eventually made 3 of them. One of them kept trying to commit suicide. Like it would just, I put it on, I would just like race to the edge of the table every time, which I don't know why. I'd have to pick it up and put it back, and it would like keep trying to run off the edge. So again, it is what how I did this, again, is thinking in a trend, computational thinking. What I mean is, I know that I made this thing, when you touch it, it makes a sound. When you touch it, it can make a projection, it can make this light on the wall get larger, which means I have options. I can say, okay, what if this is the making of it, where I use a CAD program to design what the shape would look like. All the audio because the music is very annoying. I need to get that music off of there. So this was me deciding, you know, what the rotation should be. I posted this, by the way, online on Facebook, on my Facebook page, and I asked a question: which of these shapes is more pleasing? And the one on the right came back with votes as the more pleasing arrangement of shapes. So that's why I went with that. This is me making or showing off the actual parts of it, which I then sent to a company called Shapeways, and I got the 3D printed versions back. This was kind of expensive. This is the inner part where I'm testing the wires now. When you touch the wires, it turns to servos, depending on how much you touch it. And then that little blip you saw in the middle there, I don't know why it's so short. This was the circuit board that I designed and sent it away to a company in Germany, and they actually make the circuit and send it back to you. And so this is when I was, that's the circuit board that I made when I sorted and put all of the other electronics on it, the LEDs, the little board on the back that's called an Arduino. And then I decided I would put something like a nervous system on the inside of it. So I took all of these wires and I put it on the inside. So that would also, that would add to the unpredictableness of it. It would throw off the sensors of it. That's when I first turned it on. And I realized I needed to put weight in the feet so that it would be able to stand up. It just fell over on its face. And notice that when I touch it now, it's acting very, when I say it's acting, see, that's all anthropomorphism, because it's not acting, but it looks afraid based on the shapes. I made a second one and they seem to start interacting with each other. I did not tell it what to do. I put them on the table and turned them on, and I saw this happening. And to me, that was like a simulation of life. Interestingly, when I first turned it on at home, that's all the 3D parts being made. That's my computer set up. These are the boards that I got back from another company in China, which is cheaper than Germany, called JLC PCB. And they made these, which I then took and added my own resistors and sorted everything on. When you're working on your own projects, it's easier because you can fail a lot more than if you're working on something for someone else. So this is how the board would fit on the inside, that sort of thing. But I just trying to find, this was an interesting part. I made an upgrade to them where I attempted to put microphones on the side so that it would actually pick up sound. They would hear what's going on around. And on the front, these two things can actually see shadows. So eventually the innovation on them is so that they would actually see people and hear sounds and interact with people that way rather than just touch. And that's kind of good because we're in a time now where nobody wants to touch anything. So on the right side, you see the one that I was newly making. And on the left side, that's the first one that I made. And when I turned the new one on, this happened, which was another strange thing to me. I haven't turned it on yet, I'm about to. I found that interesting. It moved away from it, which was like, to me, that was an interesting thing. So again, that's me adding meaning to things when really it's probably just something that happened. Um, all of this is the making process. Yeah. So again, iteration on a process is well, sorry, a process. It's having an idea, moving to the next thing, saying, okay, what can I do with this? I can do this. I can do something else, and it keeps growing. Um, and it's 11:06, so let me just do this quickly. After that, there was I wanted to make something called a power supply for my electronics projects, and I couldn't afford one, so I decided I would use a power supply from a computer through some tutorials that I saw online. So I bought all the parts, and I could not come up with a way to enclose it. 3D printing it would have cost too much. So walking through a local hardware store, I saw one of these, which is a gasoline can, which seemed to be the right size. And since electricity is fuel and gasoline is fuel, I thought, hey, this would be interesting. And so I put everything inside of the gasoline can. We all know what that looks like. I'm not gonna say, but I put everything inside and it actually works. And I happened to see a call online from a magazine that I followed on Facebook for interesting projects. And I sent it to them. Now it's an electronics magazine. And again, this is talking about cross-disciplinarity, if that's the right way to term it. And they liked the idea and they sent me questions and did a feature on the project. So this is an art project, art/design project that ends up in an electronics magazine. So this is a whole article that they wrote on it. Well, that they just asked me questions. And I think somewhere on the top is where I said that I purchased the parts, but I had difficulty finding a suitable enclosure. And so I went to a hardware store and found that gas can and decided I would put it together like this. I have since taken it apart and made a better one, but you see that there's interest across the board in these types of things. Another encouragement I would give, I don't know if any of you need it, is to put yourself out there so that if you have an idea, you may think that no one's interested in it, but you may be surprised how many people are interested in what you're doing. Is that, and then finally, well, two final things I'm going to show you that I worked on most recently. This, based on that same touch, board, sound, conductive paint, is that, oh, well, who's of interested in projection may be interested in this. This is using that program called Processing that I mentioned in conjunction with a Connect, Microsoft Connect, which is a depth sensor, which allows you to do things like this in projection, where it sets a limit with the depth sensor so that as you get closer to it, it sees you. But as you move further back, you are invisible, not seen. And I use that at a, call it catalysis, because I've noticed that human beings tend to do all kinds of funny things when they see themselves, when they see a reflection of themselves, when they see a projection or reflection. I don't know, when we see our shadows, we start acting, we start doing things. If we see a camera, people start doing things. I don't know why. And so there was this festival of movement, and I decided, how about rather than the art be me doing something, why don't I use the participants as the art, allow them. So I set this screen up, and behind it, I was behind it. This is me on the other side of the screen with a projector, projecting from the back. And down at the bottom, there's a little Microsoft Kinect sensor. And the water cooler was on the left side here. So I knew that when people approach the water cooler, they would suddenly see maybe their arm or an image of themselves. And I wanted to know, what would that do? What would that, how would that make people act? So suddenly people started to do stuff like this. So we get people doing all kinds of. So again, this is using the depth sensor. As you step into a certain area, past a certain area, you become visible. And if you get too close, you disappear. They, of course, don't know that I'm behind the screen recording this. This is all reusable technology, by the way, because this connects. I can take it on this screen. I can go anywhere I want and set this up. This could be set up on a permanent basis somewhere. Yes, there are. So this guy decides he wants to pass behind to see what's going on. Yes. Now I really want you all to get an opportunity to try some of this stuff out. So I'm just skipping along.
What? This one cool, like, I don't know.
Guy was so it's inspiring people to move. That's why I call it catalysis. It's like, just like triggering something to make people do things. And something about domestic violence and harassment. I made these lamppost type things that work on the same proximity principle, and to inspire people to get close to it, I put chalk on the side of it that you can write on it. And because, again, of the unpredictable nature of it, this, by the way, is called robotic art. It's a whole field that you can look into that started really in the early 90s. And some of you may be working in this field already, decided that and just didn't know that that's what it would be called. And because it's unpredictable, it shouts things out at people when I didn't intend it to. I had put it on a wall at the university just to test it out. I got women to record cat calls. So I went around, I asked some of the female students and others, employees, what do men say to you when you walk down the streets? And they recorded just a snippet of what men say to them on my mobile phone. I told them I'm gonna use it. And then I took it back and I put the recordings on a little device on the SD card and then connected all of the sensors to the panes. Sorry, to the board. And it started to shout things out at people, so much that some women got angry at me thinking I was the one shouting at them.
I like how he's doing that one.
You have to touch it. You just have to rest your hand close to it. Wait, no.
You still look for that, Roger. Oh my gosh. You looked for that.
Oi. Just want to talk to you. Oh gosh, don't run that. Come now, don't move so. Come now, don't move so. Just want to talk to you. Come talk to you now. Oi. Oi. Baby, let me get me tight.
So the whole idea of the chalk was that women would write responses to the cat calls. But the trick was when they wrote, they would get more cat calls because it's proximity, touch sensitive. So got people coming and writing. What I found interesting with it is that because it was women making the cat calls, women were more comfortable around it. And some of them laughed, some of them found it was like
Exactly.
amusing, some got upset.
I'm glad you move soon.
And then some women, which shows me the value of this type of research, art-based research, is that some of the older women
Exactly.
secretly pulled me aside and said, you
Exactly.
know, when I was younger, catcalls used to upset me, but now, maybe 50 years old or older than that, if somebody doesn't say anything when I'm all dressed up, I feel invisible. So I found that a very interesting comment that at least two of the women mentioned. Yeah, well, the words you're hearing are in Trinidad dialect. Femicado, I don't think so. I'm not sure if it's, I don't know. I just recorded some of the things. So, yeah. So this is the, these are the things that I've been working on that I can show. And it all has to do with things that I liked. I liked electronics growing up. I would take things apart a lot. I like art. I've always been involved in art from very young. It's what I studied at school. Then I studied electronics because I wanted to understand things more. I'm one of those people, as they say, that likes to know what was going on inside of the black box. I can't just have a mobile phone. I want to know how the mobile phone works and why does it do this. Whereas some people, and there's no problem with that, are just fine using the mobile phone as it is, or the VCR, or whatever it is. Let's now, feel free again to ask questions as we go along. Let's get to this link that I sent you, which is editor.p5.js, editor.p5js.org. So we're going to do some JavaScript coding. And I encourage everyone to get involved and try it out. So I'll send this link one more time, just in case some people came in and they did not have access to it. Editor.p5js.org. There it is. I'm using the Brave browser. It works best in a Chrome-based browser, like Chrome or Brave or one of those, maybe Microsoft Edge. Safari, you can get it to work in that browser, but there's some issues. DuckDuckGo is a search engine, so it's more the browser, like the whole program I'm talking about, that you need to make sure that you're using. You see the interface here. This is where you get a preview of your image. This is your canvas, create canvas. So you're telling it to make a canvas. Now, again, it's written in such a way that it seems like it's written for artists, which it is, to help artists to use, or creative people to get into coding. Function setup. When you push this little play button, function setup runs once at the beginning of your program, and then function draw loops infinitely at 60 times each second, 60 frames per second. So it's going to keep running 60 times a second infinitely. So you're telling it at the beginning to create a canvas that is 400 pixels wide by 400 pixels high. When I push the play button, it creates that canvas that is that size. You may not see the whole one on my screen because let me stretch my screen out a bit so it shows 400 pixels high by 400 pixels wide. Sometimes it's better to change this to window, capital H-E-I-G-H-T, window height. That's not the way to spell height, Roger. Did I do wrong? G-H-T, yeah. That's the way to spell height, Roger, window height. And for the width, we do window width. Window, capital W-I-D-T-H. That means that the height and the width are going to be whatever size this side of the window is. It's just automatically going to fill it. So whatever device you're using, it's going to fit. Background, this 220 is telling it what color to make the background. So the lowest is 0. If I put 0 here, it's going to be shades of gray. It's going to be the lowest level of gray, which is black, which is 0. If I put 255, which is the highest color, the highest value, it's going to be white. That's 256 colors from 0 all the way up to 255. So there, we can make our background different colors. But this is lame because we're just making a background. So I'm going to send you a link to something that's a bit more useful. And you can have a look at it. You're going to make your own drawing program. We're going to make a drawing program right now. And you're going to tell me if it works for you. This way you don't need to buy Photoshop. Because spending money on Photoshop is... Are you sure you want to leave? Yeah, we can leave it. So let me see. Let's get drawing app. And I'm going to send this to you. And you can open it from your window is large enough. Okay, I need to minimize some things. Yes, the edit code. I'm sending this in the chat for everyone. What time is it? 11:22, I think. We have some time. So that should open this very same thing that I'm looking at on the screen for you. If you don't get it, let me know. Please. And when you open it, go ahead and click this round, this play type button here, this circle with a triangle in it. And then you can interact with it. If I push this play button now, when I move my mouse, when I click and I drag, I get a circle that draws stuff. If I want to remove that, I just have to push the play button again to start over. You'll notice also that the cursor is disappearing. It's no longer showing on top of your gray area. But when you draw, you can still draw on it. Now, this is hardly the same thing as Photoshop, right? It's hardly even Microsoft Paint. But you see, with just these, what do you call it, 17 lines of code, you have made, or you can make a program that people can draw with. If you send this code, so in the file menu at the top, first of all, well, not first of all, but what I would encourage you to do is make an account, like log in or sign up for this thing if you haven't already. That's this editor, make an account. And then you can go to file and duplicate the code that I've made. Because one of the wonderful things about working in this type of environment, working in coding and generative design, computational art, is that people share things. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, as I said. So the same way that I shared this code with you, you can then take this and go further. I have not copyrighted this. Right, so Jalissa has her drawing tablet hooked up, which is good. You can draw things. Now, what if you wanted a different size tip? You can come over instead of having, okay, I'll go from the top. Like I said, in function setup runs once. You see, you have the words function setup. There's two brackets, which starts everything running. And then you have this curly brackets. This curly bracket here, if I click on it, you'll see that the one on line 6 is highlighted. That means this entire section is a block of code. This entire area is function setup. It starts on this line and it ends on this line. When it gets to this line, it then skips down to function draw, which starts on this line with this bracket. Everything inside of here happens. Then it goes down to, this is the last part, but with function draw, once it gets to here, it then loops back to the beginning of function draw 60 times each second. It keeps doing that over and over again. And so we set the size of the canvas. We say create a canvas that is the width of the window, comma, the height of the window. Our parameters or our arguments go within the brackets. Each line ends with a semicolon, which is like a full stop encoding, or in JavaScript at least. So this is like a sentence saying do this, then stop. Then set the color mode to hue, saturation, and brightness. HSB, which means the first number is going to be the hue, comma, the second number is going to set the saturation of the color, comma, the third number is going to be the brightness of the color. How can we use that? Right now, we're making a background. The first number is the hue of the background, comma, the second number is the saturation, the third number is the brightness. Therefore, I can change the saturation from 0, which will keep it in shades of gray, to maybe 25. If I change the saturation, or the S, middle number, to 25, when I run it again, you'll see that it has added saturation to it. Why is it pink? Because our hue is 0, which is red on that. The highest value for the hue is 359. The lowest value is 0 because it's like it's 360 degrees. It's like a circle. If I let's open this just so you can see it. Let's see. Recolor, world's favorite coloring app. Let's find color.adobe.com. Perhaps I should use colorizer.org. I think that may be better. COLORICER. There we go. Colorizer.org allows us to find colors and use them. This way you don't have to guess what numbers to use. So I can come down to, since we're using HSB color, this is RGB up here, which is the normal or the default way that P5JS does color. But if I come down to here where it says HSB/HSB, we can choose a color here. You see on the right side, there's this little green, this is a little square that shows us what our color is. We can set the hue. So if I want maybe a purple, that's purple, that's close to purple. And if I want a light, maybe lilac, or want this color here, you can adjust it. And once you've chosen, once you've found the color that you want, then you just look for these numbers. So my hue will be 269, my saturation will be 24, and my brightness will be 68. So that's 269, 24, 68. Let me try that. So for my first number, I'm going to type 269. I think it was 24. And the brightness will be 68. When I run that, yes, that's the color. However, again, what if I want my drawing not to be that color blue? Let's move down to, well, let me finish with setup. I have this line here, this function called no cursor with the 2 brackets and the semicolon that removes the cursor from showing. If I turn it back on, so I'm gonna do something called commenting out a line of code. I'm gonna put 2 slashes in front of it. It turns a light gray or a gray color, which means this code is no longer read by the program. When I run this now, you will see the cursor in front of the drawing. So that's what no cursor does, and that's what commenting out code does. So I'm gonna turn it back on by removing the slashes. When I run this, I'm not seeing the cursor anymore. Now, what does function draw do? Again, it loops 60 times each second. And that is why we're seeing this trail happening, because this is not a line we're drawing. This is a series of dots, which is what a line is actually. So this is a series of ellipses being drawn 60 times per second, but we're moving them. And so that's why you get that trail, which looks as though we're drawing. Is anyone having problems? Not able to do it? No? Sounds fine. Excellent. Just had to turn the video back on so I can see everyone. So we're able to draw. Let's look inside a function draw now. We're using something called a conditional statement. Remember before I spoke about that logic about if it's raining, I won't go to dinner, but it's not raining, so I will. That choice that has to be made in programming or in everyday life. This is what this whole block of code called a conditional statement or an if statement is doing. It's saying if mouse is pressed, notice you have to have a capital I and a capital P for it to work. If mouse is pressed, then set the fill color to these colors, which is 255, 255, 255. This is hue, saturation, and brightness. Set the stroke, which is the outline, to 100 hue, 0 saturation, 0 brightness, and then draw an ellipse using those colors. In programming, things happen from top to bottom, coming down, which is like the inverse of what we're accustomed to. So if we look at it this way, this is like you've set a canvas on your desk inside of setup. You've chosen the type of paint you want to use, which is hue, saturation, and brightness. You've painted a background using these colors from your paint box, from your paint pots, a paint collection on the canvas. You've removed the cursor, and then you come down into draw, and you've chosen this kind of paint from your paints, this color, hue, saturation, brightness. You've drawn an outline using this color, and then you draw an ellipse using the paint that you have on your brush. So even though it's happening top to bottom on this side, we're seeing it happening in the reverse, coming from the desk all the way to the top on this side. So if we want to change the stroke, we can, if we want to remove the stroke, so if Jalissa is using her tablets or anyone else, a drawing tablet, you can type no stroke. So I'm gonna comment this line out by putting 2 slashes in front of it. Put another line below and type NO capital S TROKE. I put the 2 brackets and the semicolon. So just like no cursor removes the cursor, I put the 2 slashes in front of stroke, which makes this code invisible to the program. Then I typed no stroke with the brackets and the semicolon. And when I run that, there's no stroke anymore. Which your mileage may vary in terms of usability. Then we draw our ellipse. In the ellipse function, or the ellipse shape that you drew, let's understand what's going on here. The first 2 parameters, the first one before the comma, the second one, decide what location the ellipse will be, whether it will be, well, where it will be. We have set it to be mouse, capital X, which means it's gonna follow the horizontal position of the mouse, and mouse, capital Y, which means it's gonna follow the vertical position of the mouse, and it's going to be a size of 30 horizontal, 30 vertical, 30 in width, 30 in height. What can we do with that? Temporarily, I'm gonna put my stroke back on. So I'm gonna comment out the no stroke line, 2 slashes in front of it. I'm gonna remove the slashes from this one. So see it on the screen there. I have taken the 2 slashes off from in front of the stroke. I put it back on. Turn this line back on, sorry, and I put this out to get rid of the no stroke. I put the 2 slashes there, so it's grayed out now. So what I'm going to do, back to what we were at in the beginning, an ellipse being drawn. I can change the size by changing the 30. If I put 300 here instead, which is gonna be ridiculously big, and I run it, you'll see I now have a 300 pixel by 300 pixel ellipse being drawn on the screen. Don't feel free to ask questions and to stop me as you go along. And if there's anything you don't understand, I mean, this is a new thing to many people, so don't feel bad if you don't understand it at first. But the important thing is to just try things out. You're not in the situation where you can pause an infinite loop and crash your computer just yet. So don't worry. And even in that case, you don't need to worry. So the way I'm doing this is I set the stroke back on. I turned off no stroke. I can delete this line if I want to, totally, because I'm not using it. And I'm drawing an ellipse using the color that's above it. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're coding, right? Changing code, making things happen. Now, let's try something else. Let's use a different function to draw a shape. Let's change ellipse to rect, R-E-C-T. And can you guess what that's gonna draw? Push run, I get a rectangle. The first two parameters determine the position, that's the horizontal position, vertical position. The second two parameters again, horizontal size, the vertical size. So I could put this as maybe 50 in vertical height and 20 as horizontal as a width. And when I do that, I get a 20 wide rectangle by a 50 tall rectangle. And we are drawing with code again. But this is us interacting with it by actually controlling it. One of the things with the rectangle though is that whereas the ellipse was centered on the center of the ellipse, it was using the axis, the center of the ellipse. Can you record what's happening on the screen? A recording is happening right now, I believe, of the meeting we're having. But to record this that you're doing, there's a way to do it. If you have a screen recorder, there's a program called OBS. It's an open source program that you can use to do a screen recording. However, there's also a way that I devised, that I shared with some people. I still have to sort out, actually, I have it on my page. How can I add multiple colors and switch between them? So somebody really wants to make a drawing program here now. That's a little more complex, but it's doable. I can't show you that right now. One of the things that I worked on not too long ago is this little thing. If I go to my website again, this thing called Big Hair. And you'll see that this is almost the same thing that we're doing right now, which is where I put this head here, that when you choose, let's see, you choose your controls, you wanna control the body. You can shift where the body is. You can shift where the woman is on the screen. You can rotate her and move her up and down. But you can also draw hair on her head. You can draw big hair on her head. You can change the size of her lips. You can change the color of her lips. And then when you're done with it, so you can change the color of her hair. You can draw on the back of her head. You can draw on the front of her head. So I can put hair on the front. You can change the type of curls, whether it's like big curls or small curls. And when you finish, you can click save. And it should allow you to download or save. Yeah, download it to your desktop. And some children have been having fun with it. Because one of the good things about this, you can use this on your mobile phone, and you can use it on any device, a tablet device, or any one of these things. So yeah, this was just me experimenting. I'm gonna stop it because sometimes these things cause the resources on your phone to die really quickly. Right, so that question about adding multiple colors, you can change the colors by changing the fill, but at this point, we can't do it live just yet. That's something further on, which tell me if you all want me to do an actual course on this, like a full length thing, and let me know. And if going forward, I will just say this, if going forward after today you have any questions, feel free to email me or ask, and I'm willing to do this for free. Just ask me and I'm just gonna send you information. I'm gonna help you out because I want more people to actually learn and keep doing these things. Yes. Changing the color again, we can change the hue, saturation, brightness. I mentioned before that the rectangle, if I make one rectangle, let me turn the cursor back on just so you can see this. You'll notice that when I click once, the rectangle is to the right. I'm drawing from the top right-hand corner, top left-hand corner of the rectangle, which is not the ideal thing sometimes. So to center the rectangle on the cursor, you'd have to change the rectangle mode, which I will do by coming up in setup. I'll make a new line and I will type rect, capital M-O-D-E. And in the brackets, semicolon at the end, I'm going to type in all caps C-E-N-T-E-R. So the rect mode will now be center. When I run that, what's going to happen is when I click now, it's going to be centered on the cursor, which is more precise with what people want to do. It's no longer on the top left-hand corner of the rectangle. So I've changed the rect mode to center, whereas with this ellipse or the circle, we did not have to do that. It was automatically centered on the cursor. You notice that you can have white space. Sometimes you may want to keep things clear in your code so that it's understandable. I have an extra space between here, between stroke and rect, and that's going to be ignored by the program, but it helps me to see what's going on. And if you want to have things explained so that when you come back to your code, you can understand it, you can do this same comment thing that I do. So if you want to say / make a rectangle, this, because I put the 2 slashes, this is just a comment that helps me understand what happens next. And the program is not gonna, this is not gonna interfere with the program in any way. It can even be in the same line as the code. You can put / after it and type, this is a rectangle or something. And that's a comment as well. The slashes before it means that that's not the way to spell rectangle, Roger. Okay, yeah, I'll just delete that. So this is, again, drawing with the code. Now, you can do something interesting. Let me show you right now. We have, let me show you something else. Students love random. And it's like one of the things I regret showing students sometimes because they use random for everything, but it's kind of fun. Rather than have the size of the rectangle be a set size, I'm going to change this back to the ellipse, by the way. E-L-L-I-P-S-E. Run it, and we get an ellipse. Yes. Let's try this. So let's look at this. Look at what I'm doing here. Instead of 20 for the width, I'm going to type an entire function. So before that last comma, that second to last number, I'm going to type random, R-A-N-D-O-M, and an open bracket. Right, yes. So you have a note there that all of them are being recorded, all of the sessions. I'm going to type random and put 20, which is the number we had there before, comma, and the second number, let's put 40, and another bracket. Shift this so that it's on the screen. You can drag the side there just so that you can see things better if you like. We have just about 15 minutes more, I'm being told. So I wasn't supposed to say that because it was a private message. I have to remember not to do those things. Thank you. So we have, in place of the 20 before, we have this entire thing before the last comma. We have random, open brackets, 20, comma, 40, closing bracket. And some of you may have already pushed play, but what happens with that is when we draw now, we get this happening. Because the ellipse is now for its width choosing a random number between 20 and 40. You're telling it, choose a random number. The lowest one should be 20, the highest one should be 40. So between there may be a 15, no, not 15, there may be a 30, 25, 35, 31, 21, and it wiggles like that over and over again. It just keeps wiggling. Back and forth, we can do the same thing for the height. We can say, oh, somebody broke it. What happened, Jalissa? Are you able to share your screen? I don't know if participants are allowed to share their screen. But just look closely at script error line 0. Go through each line and look at the way things are written. Make sure that happens sometimes. So it's not that much of an issue. What you're gonna need to do, you're missing a comma. When you put the comma, did it start working again? Yes, that was Emmanuel. So that's what you have to do. You look very carefully to make sure that that everything that's there should be there. Oftentimes I have to look through an entire 100 lines of code or more just to find what may be the problem. The problem with processing with P5.js, this editor, is sometimes it doesn't tell you what line it's on. Most times, rather than script error line 0, it would tell you it's line 12 or what particular line to look for. So I hope you get it working. She fixed it. What was the problem? A missing comma. Yes. Good. Now, once you're logged in, you can save your code as well, which is a good thing to do. And if you want to find your sketches that you've made or your programs that you've made, you come up to your name on the top right-hand side and you'll see My Sketches and you'll be able to load one. All of this is well and good, but what if you don't want to just be drawing with ellipses and rectangles? This gets boring pretty soon. You can import your own images. So I'm going to open another one, My Sketches, don't save. And in here I have, well, I will quickly do the move one. How much time do we have? I'll do move. You can draw different shapes, of course, but this one is the move one. This has a ton of different coordinates. I will try to edit it just so that it's not so, let me do this quickly. Let's do this quickly, which will teach you about variables and so let me delete some lines. This, delete that. These extra lines are things that I put in there to assist.
Oh God, sorry.
Something's playing in the background. Oh, this is playing. I just want to delete these so it's clear what's happening before I send it to you and it's not as complicated. Right, save this and I will share it before we go. And like I said, we can share information later. Maybe I talked too much in the beginning, but I just wanted you to understand everything. So this new one is going to allow us to move the object. When I click run, you'll see we have a rectangle that's moving on its own and it's going across the screen. And that is happening because I made these things called variables. You can name a variable anything you want to. So for example, I named one Timmy, which was the name of my dog from some years ago. I say let Timmy. So in the program's memory, the computer's memory is saying, make a space and call it Timmy and put a 0 in there, put the number 0 in there. This is a global variable, which means it can be used through the entire program. Then make another one. You say let speed, you name it speed. You can name this anything you want. I can name this, let me choose a name. I see Dwight Ferguson. Name it Dwight. Let Dwight equal 1. Inside of function setup, remember this is a block of code here. Dwight, sorry for targeting you like this, but right. Let me choose somebody else instead of Timmy. I see we have I'll choose Esther. Yeah, right. So we have let Esther equal 0, let Dwight equal 1. Note I said try changing this number. We'll get to that later. Inside of setup, we create our canvas. We set our color mode to hue, saturation, brightness. We set our rect mode to center. Inside of function draw, we draw our background. Before, our background was inside of setup. I can explain that another time. But we have our background, but you notice we have a 4th number inside of background. This 4th number says transparency. I'll explain that a bit later. Inside of function draw, this block of code, we say we want our rectangle, and instead of the first number being mouse X or a number, we say we want it to be, not Timmy, but Esther. What does that mean? That means it should be twice. And this should be Esther. Yes. So what we're saying is set the rectangle to whatever Esther is. Esther is 0. So now this Esther means 0, not literally, don't be offended, Esther Chen. I'm just saying that in the program, Esther represents whatever number is here. This number could be 10. Now Esther would be equal to 10. And then Dwight is equal to 1. And we're saying that while this loops 60 times per second, Dwight should be Dwight plus Esther. So that means 1 through the first loop will be 1 plus 10. Dwight will be 1 plus 10, which means he's 10 now. When it loops through, he will be 10 plus 10, which will be 20. When it loops through the second time, so 60 times per second, you're going to keep adding 10 to whatever Dwight is. And Dwight is going to keep moving up and increasing. And that is being put as a position. I think I did this the wrong way. Yeah, this first number should be Esther, sorry. And the second one should be Dwight. And now, when we run that, note what's happening. The first number is the position of the rectangle. And the first number is increasing. This Esther number is going from 10 to 11 because it's increasing by 1. It's going from 10 to 11 to 12 to 13, 14, 15, 16. It keeps increasing by 1. And this is looping 60 times per second. So every time it loops, it's increasing by 1. So that's why it keeps changing. It's increasing by 1. So the mouse has nothing to do with it. And it goes off the screen and it keeps going infinitely. It's still going, even though we're not seeing it. It's still going. And so let me save this. I don't think I shared it with you all yet. And we're running out of time, so. Is that one, did I share it? Yeah, I did, yeah. So if I made any mistakes, it should be cleared up now with what you're seeing on the screen now. It moves all the way across the screen and it keeps going. And I'll show you one more after that quickly. Is that you can use an if statement to make it come back. Because I named it Angela and SpeedX this time. I have a whole lot of code here to delete again about comments. But let's just look at this. You have your function set up here. ignore the gray code as much as you can. Just do this. I do all of these comments so that when I send it to students, they can just read through and understand exactly what's going on. I will leave the rest of that. That's understandable. Share this. Let's see. So it's coming through the chat now. This one bounces back. Why? Because I say in here that if this variable called Angela, which is set to 200, if Angela is less than 0, or that's what these two poles mean. I don't know if you've ever used that on your keyboard, but right above the enter key or the return key, there's a vertical stroke, which is called a pole. If you look at your keyboard on your computer, when you put two of them together like that in programming, it means or. So you're saying if Angela is less than 0 or greater than the width of the entire page, change the direction, go back in the other direction. And so when I run this, you'll see the number goes up, but when it hits the end, it bounces back and it comes back to the other side. So that way you can trap the object on the inside of something. And you can do that vertically and horizontally and get those kind of old school toasters bouncing around the screen kind of thing, which is how you would do that. I see Reginald rubbing his head. I don't know if he's like going crazy. Like I'm frustrating him with this stuff. No? I know it's difficult. It's a Saturday.
No, it's not really difficult for me, but I just want to understand more. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Yes.
Yeah, but I use computer to check my mail, to use another stuff about that. But I remember one time I use computer to create something about at the center that is not really my work to do, but it's very precious to take more attention to understand more, because it's really important for me, because I want to understand. But one question.
Yes.
I suppose to create a video art to give out as a project, or I can work by my way.
Can you do what?
For the project, for the Stateless project, I suppose to do a video work, or I just do my way as an artist.
You can do your way. I think you just experiment with this. I'm going to send you all some more examples. And what I would say to you is just try changing some of the numbers.
Yes, that's the reason why.
If you see a 50, try changing it to 5
yeah.
or any number in between there and see what happens. And it may inspire you. You know what? I can change a color. Sorry, go ahead.
That the reason why I save all link I saw here, because that's very incredible to see you can create another way. That's as hard as when you see what kind of thing that's gonna be give you more idea to create another way. I love that.
Great. Glad that you're inspired in some way. That's the thing. It's just like tweaking things and using them to your advantage. So I hope that, just to wrap up, that in whatever your field is, you can see that this can be valuable in some way, because we're dealing with numbers. So if you're in architecture, I know some people here are in landscape design, jewelry, things like that. You can use this if you have data. So you have a sensor that's pulling in data, or somebody gives you data on how many people are affected by a certain thing. You can maybe show a map of your country and show, okay, this is affecting this set of people more than that, and it can grow and change depending on how much information comes in to your website. Or you can, I'll wrap up by showing this thing that I did. Where is it? It's somewhere along here. Yeah, so this is using sound. So just that when we're changing numbers and using mouse X and mouse Y, this is using sound, some music that I made to decide where each one of these rectangles will be. So I did not have to move the rectangles on my own. I just put the music in there, and I wrote the code that when it senses the music, the different levels of it, it puts angles in that position close to it or far away from it. So this could very well be a chart that shows something or something else. And I don't know if time. Is there any apps that could be used to create interactive video without code knowledge? Yes, there are.
I remember, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing.
I remember when I was in Trinidad and Tobago doing the Carifesta, I saw in some technology arts, and I remember this person asked me, you can try this. I put something like a glasses on my head. I see many stuff like moving. That's kind of technology too, right?
Yeah, that's like virtual reality type things that you can do as well. Esther Chin asked if there are any apps that can be used to create it without coding knowledge. There are. I will have to do some research because I've typically been doing it where I write my own code, but you can also, like I say, get someone to do some code for you that does what you want to do, which is what this local artist has done. She's asked me to help her. So I'm doing the back end of it, which is the actual making of the thing, making of the device and the wiring and the soldering and the etc. And she's going to put the actual interactive video part on it, which people look at. Excuse me. So there's that as well. I didn't get to show you that you can import your own images, so you don't have to use ellipses and things. You can use your own images as well. If I just send you this link so you can look at it on your own. I have to move this window out of the way. And I'm just gonna send you a link. You can look at some students' work. Yeah, you can have a look at what some other students have done in the past. Put it in the chat.
Yeah.
And you can have a look there. You can click on that and see. Using their own images, using the same random and that sort of thing. And some students' work. This one by Leah Clark called Breaking News actually uses the it uses the microphone on your device. And when you speak, it picks up your sound of your voice and it moves the girl's lips as though she's speaking. And all of these students here, in fact, these were not the ones that were surveyed. This was a class after that. Okay, so you all have some other things coming up this afternoon. So thank you for attending and paying attention. And I hope that you're inspired to do some new things. You can get my contact information through the hosts and moderators if you'd like to get any more information. And like I say, feel free to ask me anything you want to, and I will try my best to help you. I will try my best to help you with whatever questions you have. Okay? Yes, great.
Very good. Thank you so much, Roger. Wow, I had some comments coming to me outside of the chat. You know, people's minds were blown. You know, new areas were just kind of exposed to them. Thank you so much for showing the kind of possibilities, you know, the kind of range that we can get into. So I will, yes, I'll put his email address in the chat. And but I know I want to give you a little break so that you go off, refresh a bit to join back in for the 1 p.m. session. Right? So thank you so much, guys. Tomorrow you'll get a chance to rest. There's no sessions tomorrow, and then we move into Monday morning, but just take it as it is. Don't get too confused or frustrated. It's content to just help you broaden your thinking, broaden your minds, so that when you start to produce your piece, you would have had these elements to infuse into it. That's all. You're not to become coders if you don't want to. So this is just about that. Thank you so much, Roger, for just helping us through this morning to open our eyes. I like some of the phrases I heard, you know, robotic art, right? You're talking about visual art in a whole new way. Those elements of responsiveness, you know, so art that now talks back. Fantastic, fantastic. So thanks, guys. See you back in, what, 53 minutes?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. Take a break and we'll see you back in a bit.
Take care.
Alrighty.